Amaan, welcome to BGS.
Thank you for having me.
This is so exciting. I feel like you're doing really cool stuff, so I can't wait to get into it.
My tagline is I make cool shit for cool people, so I would say you're right with that.
And very on brand for me because I'm now trying to focus on getting more and more people on here who are doing really cool shit. I guess just to start with, what is the coolest shit you've worked on recently?
The coolest shit I've worked on recently is Wicked, but I'm working on something right now which I think is my most exciting project that I can't quite talk about. Yeah, but yeah, that'll be really, really cool when that comes out.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's exciting, I think, for people to kind of keep an eye out about in the next few months.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us who you are.
My name's Amaan Duffer. I'm 21. I'm the founder of Basliq, which is the coolest jewellery brand in the world.
Why Basliq? What does the name mean to you?
It means thriving in Greek. I studied Latin and classics all throughout high school and sixth form, and I was actually intending to study classics at university. Clearly that didn't happen, but it was just always something I had such a strong interest in, and when I was starting my brand, I wanted to sort of still keep that in. And so I sat down with my Latin teacher one day and just asked her what a bunch of different words would mean, and then we found Basliq.
And have you always been drawn to the arts?
Always. Forever. I used to dance, I used to sing, play the violin, act. There's a video of me in a couple of adverts somewhere on YouTube that I will not ever show anybody, but they're there. I'd always dreamt of getting into theatre and being in musical theatre, and that didn't end up happening for me, but fashion was always like the backbone. It was like the common thread in my family. Like, that was the one thing that we all had in common, is that we all loved clothes and shoes and bags and jewelry. And so I'd always known that at some point I will foray into fashion. I have sketchbooks from when I was like 8, 9, 10 years old, filled with drawings of dresses. And there's dresses that are in my mum's cupboard somewhere that I'd like hand sewn with scraps of fabric. So like, I've cried on a Sunday afternoon if I had to take me to the fabric shop, and I have all of this stuff somewhere in my parents' house.
Were you completely self-taught?
Yeah. I taught myself, during COVID, through YouTube, I taught myself how to cut patterns and sew clothes, and I actually started my brand making clothes. I never set out to make jewelry. And I taught myself everything from YouTube.
And how did you pivot to jewelry then?
I'd made one ring, and that ring just got a lot of really good reception online. And then Bella Hadid wore it. And I said to myself, okay, well, if Bella Hadid's wearing your ring, dude, maybe you should just focus on that for a little bit, and you can pick back up the clothes if you can, but for now, do what's working.
How did Bella Hadid end up wearing your ring? Like, did she just wake up one day and was like...
So I'd done a pop-up in Soho in London. I was still in sixth form at this point. I was finishing up my education. And my brother and I went for dinner in Berenjack after. And we were sat at the bar, and Bella, Dua, Anwar, her boyfriend at the time, and Sarah Lysander all walk in, and I was like, oh my God, that was Bella Hadid. I recognize her anywhere. And then I went outside to text a friend that, oh my goodness, Bella Hadid just walked into the restaurant I'm at. And her brother came out, and he was having a cigarette, and I started chit-chatting to him. And he'd asked me where my rings were from, and it was like the most perfect setup because I didn't have to say anything.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my goodness, I actually make them. I'd love to give you one, yada, yada, yada. And then that evening ended with me giving Bella some of those rings and having a conversation with her. That evening completely changed the trajectory of my career and my life and like what I was planning to do.
What was Bella Hadid like?
The sweetest person in the world.
Really?
And I bumped into her a few times since, and she's remembered me every single time. She's wonderful.
What would you say was, I guess, like the motivation to go up and just say hi? Like, how overt versus like casual do you have to be?
I think it's about just being yourself outside of that specific situation, because that was complete luck. That also at that same day, Anwar had posted on his story, oh, where can I find cool jewelry in London? So he was looking out for something that I was able to offer. And it was just by God's grace or the universe's will that encounter had happened. But I truly believe it's about being genuine, because it's so easy to spot somebody who's just putting on a facade. especially within fashion, for example, because 90% of people are. And when you're dealing with so much BS and so many faces that aren't real faces, when somebody is genuine and they are themselves, it really stands out. And you're drawn to them, and you're drawn to the aura, and you're drawn to the vibe. And that's what I've always tried to do, is just be myself. If I'm a fan of somebody, I will say to them that I really respect their work. I'm never going to go up to someone if they're in a private moment or having dinner or somewhere where they don't want to be approached. I've been in situations where there's been people who I would die to have my jewelry on, but it's not an appropriate setting to even have that conversation.
Yeah.
And so in that moment, you're just whatever they need you to be. You're a friend of a friend having dinner with them. You're a friend of a friend having a cigarette with them. You're not you as a career person. You're you as a real human being. And that means so much more, because it's a very small world. The chances are you will bump into these people again.
Yeah.
And then they're going to remember you as that nice person they shared a cigarette with, or that nice person that they had a drink with. And that could give you the opening to mention what you do. And, you know, for me with fashion, people love to collaborate. People love to try new things. And so it's a lot easier to be able to like segue into that conversation. But 99% of it's just being yourself, dude. Yeah.
Just, I guess, where you see an opening to pitch your work or put your work forward, then definitely do it. But don't just throw it down people's throats.
It's just let it be organic, because if it's so forced, it's like, why would anyone really want to help you when you don't even care about who they are? You care about what they are. And there's such a big difference. Like, somebody may be a supermodel, but that's what they are. That's not who they are.
You said 90% of people in the industry are not that, right? But that doesn't mean that they're not successful. So what would compel somebody then to tap into their authenticity if it doesn't always correlate to success?
That's a difficult question. That's a very difficult question. I feel as though it's about longevity, because there's only so long you can keep up a facade. And if you're pretending to be somebody you're not, you're going to slip up. Or, you know, if you're pretending to be able to do something that you can't, you're going to get caught out. And people talk. People love to talk. Within fashion, people love to talk. There's no bigger trend than gossiping.
Yeah.
So you make one wrong move and it's Chinese whispers. The whole industry's going to hear it.
Yeah. And you're right in that. I think when you're not being your true self, it's so much easier to slip up and make a mistake. You've laid too many things there, you know, to slip up on. But the reason I ask you is because I think it's a very topical question in the creative industry overall. Like, especially people who are intuitive, like I would say, you know, in my case, I would say I can call it out, and I think you can as well, when someone's not being real. And I often see like people who aren't real are still doing very, very well. It's like, at what
but it's also,
point?
Are they really doing well, or do you just think they're doing well?
Yeah,
because they're fooling you.
Maybe, yeah, exactly. And it comes down to your values, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like, it's always the longer road that's the hardest. But to me, I also feel like I can't live with myself if I live any other way, or like, you know, behave any other way. So yeah, I think it's a very interesting thing to reflect on, definitely. But going back to you, so you were saying to me before we started recording that you actually don't know where you grew up, like you kind of were everywhere. So tell me a little bit about that.
It's not that, it's that, like, so my mum's Pakistani. She was born in Pakistan and she moved here when she was in her late teens, early 20s. My dad's Indian. He was born in England. I've never been to India. Yet when people asked me where I was from growing up, I would say I'm Indian, but I'd never been there, so I never identified with that. And with Pakistan, I think the last time I was there, I was maybe 9 years old. I don't remember anything from that place. And I grew up outside of Manchester, but I would just wish to get away from that. Any opportunity I could, I would be somewhere else. And when I was old enough to start taking the train by myself, I would be coming down to London with a friend and just hanging out in the city, just because it felt so much more like where I belonged than where I was. And like towards my late teens, and you know, when I really started to become like a person, I was spending so much time in Dubai that started to feel like home. And now I'm in my early 20s, and I would say London and Dubai is home. Where I grew up's not my home.
Do you have roots in Dubai as well?
I have a lot of family. Well, my immediate family, we all spend a lot of time there. When people say they go home for Christmas, I go to Dubai for Christmas, and my mum and dad are going to be there. My sister, my nephew, and nieces are going to be there. My brother, like, I'm going home to my family, but it's not where we grew up. It's somewhere else.
And how has being from, I guess, all of these different places and having these two cultures, do you feel like that has influenced your work in any way?
I've been asked this before as well, and I hate to say that I don't think that it has influenced my work. I think I have a finer appreciation for it because I grew up with my mum and my sister wearing this beautiful ornate jewellery. But my dad also used to walk around with like full fingers of diamond rings on. And I would see a man wearing rings and I wouldn't have any sort of stigmatism towards that growing up. So like now I get comments with like, oh, well, jewelry's for women. When I wear my rings, I'm like, but that not to me. My dad would wear 4 rings on each finger. And I'd seen that since the day I was born. Like it's not weird to me. It's not unusual.
Yeah.
But all of my work is really influenced by my life and like things that happen to me and different journeys I've been on and relationships and experiences that I've gone through.
Yeah.
It's how I tell like my story and how I deal with my emotions is putting it into my jewelry.
With regards to your jewelry and your designs, do you have an approach to coming up with a final design? Like, talk me through your process a bit.
So everything starts with a story. If something particular happens and I think it's a really cool moment, I'll try and capture that into jewelry. And obviously you can't translate something directly into something that's going to, like, nobody else will get it, but I'll understand like the trickling down from it. Like this piece, for example, it's called my jungle desert ring. So we've got the green enamel for the jungle leaves and then this yellow stones that's supposed to represent the desert. And I know what that means, but to anybody else, it's just a beautiful ring. But for me, it was a way to capture a moment in my life.
Yeah. So then how do you translate that into, say, a sale?
I think people can connect with what I do because it's so playful at the same time. And as much as it's abstract, it's still sort of relatable. Like I had a cowboy ring hat earlier this year.
I loved that ring.
And to me, that was so personal.
Yeah.
But it was also so relatable to hundreds of other people.
Yeah.
It's weird in the way that experiences that we all have in our own lives, as unique as they are wildly translatable.
I think it's very interesting, this idea that you shared about how certain things can mean something to you, but you don't necessarily have to vocalize that.
Yeah.
It's just through the art and it's the interpretation of the person on the other side. They might see it a different way, actually.
They could see it completely a different way. And do you know what? That's completely fine.
Yeah.
That's what it means to you.
Yeah.
But when I was setting out on creating that piece, that was the story that was running through my mind. And that was what I wanted to capture.
Do you have any designs that you just get icked out by now when you look at them?
I wouldn't say icked out by. There's certain things that I have like sampled and made and that haven't made it into production. But I think that's just everybody's creative process, and that's might have been because it's a bit too niche and really just not commercial at all. Or I just don't really resonate with that or the person I was when that piece was made. So there's a lot of things that I like, you know, I've done maybe 50 or 60 pieces of and it's never come back. And then there's things that I re-release every 3 months as soon as it sells out. So okay, how let's get it back in, because I still feel as though they're relevant to me. But as soon as something no longer feels like it's part of my story, I cut it out of the offering.
And how manual is that process? Because you just said that when something sells out, you kind of re-release it or you work on it again. Is there like, do you outsource the actual creation of it, or is it handmade?
So everything's handmade.
Okay.
It's not handmade by me anymore because that would be crazy. But yeah, I work really closely with a small production house that handle everything, and they're incredible. I'm very lucky to have found them because I have a lot of friends who are in the same field. They have startups, and it's so difficult to find good producers and good manufacturers. And so the lady I work with, I recommend her to everybody who ever asks me. I think last week alone, I sent her number to 2 different friends.
Yeah.
I was like, she knows everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like with any company, no matter how big you are, having like the right people in your supply chain is really important.
What part of the business do you think you're most hands-on with right now?
Everything.
Okay.
Truly everything, because all designing comes from me. All sort of creative stuff comes from me. I've recently started working with a wonderful PR agency in New York that we've been doing a lot of brand building ahead of next year. But even prior to that, like every placement came from me cold emailing a stylist or being put in touch through a friend. Like I really be doing the most, dude.
Talk to me about the cold emailing process. Does it ever get exhausting?
It does get exhausting, but you'll send maybe 200 emails, and if you get one return out of that, you think, do you know what? That'll give you that gives you the oomph to go for another 200 more. I was really lucky. Early in my career, I got to work with Doja Cat. Wow. And that was through I'd cold emailed Brett, and months later, somebody from his team had reached out to me. I was like, wait, is this fake? But no, it was because of a cold email that I didn't get an immediate response to, but the response came a couple months later. And it's just like, if you have a brand and you're reaching out to stylists, don't be disheartened if you don't get a response straight away, because all of those lookbooks go into a file, and when the right project comes up, they'll call on you.
Just playing the long game again.
It's all about I'm here for the long game in my personal life and business life. I feel like that's the way to go.
You know, you're very relatively young to be having this realization. Like in my life, I only realized this, and I think I'm a bit older than you. So it's really good to see how, I guess, the up and coming generation of designers and creators are so much more informed. And I don't know if it's because of social media or because of learnings from other generations.
I wouldn't credit it to social media.
Okay.
I think social media has opened us up to so much more information. However, most of that, I think, it takes a lot of filtering to actually receive anything useful from that. I have always surrounded myself with people who are a lot older than me, people who I look up to, and I've taken as much information from them as possible and applied that into my own life, and I've taken their lessons and learnings. I also think just moving out on your own so young, you're forced to grow up.
Yeah.
And like I'd been working in fashion. I had my first internship when I was 13. And I'd been doing, I knew where I wanted to go, and I was just eager to get there. And I had been working since, and I was taking all of those lessons and applying them into my own life, and I always felt older than I was, and I still do.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't mean to age shame you actually at all. But I'm kind of reflecting on my own journey as a creator, and I wish I'd known these things sooner. I think I'm
very lucky that I've had these realizations and I made these mistakes already. But I've always joked around with my friends that I might be young now, but second I'm 30, no one's ever going to see me again.
Why is that?
I'm disappearing.
Where are you going to disappear off to?
I haven't got that far ahead, but give me 9 years and I'll be out of here.
What's the dream? To just retire at 30?
Not even retire at 30, just to not have to be on the carousel anymore, you know? It's very exhausting, particularly within fashion. There is no such thing as a break. You know, like the Fashion Awards happened 2 days ago, and even before Fashion Awards had finished, the conversation was Met. I'd finished the Met this year, and I was like, my immediate thought was, what am I going to do next year?
Yeah.
And that's where my brain's at, because it's also like the second you get on, it just gets faster and faster and faster, because there's more things that you have to worry about. You know, my first year working, where I was like, who am I going to dress for the Fashion Awards? And then it was, oh my goodness, I've got the Met Gala. And then it was like, okay, well, next year I have to do Fashion Awards and Met Gala, and then Oscars also.
Yeah.
And then the Grammy. And you have to keep up with all these incredible moments that are going on in pop culture just to stay relevant and stay afloat.
How have you gotten through these doors?
Partially luck, partially perseverance. And I think a lot of it is just I've managed to sort of build a lot of really important friendships that are genuine friendships with people who are already in those rooms that want to support me for me and want to see me win. And I'm so grateful to those people for seeing something in me and wanting to support me. And I know that's not the answer that anybody listening to this would want to hear, but it's just about all these people, okay, I've been lucky to be in the room, so I met them, but getting out of the room and, you know, actually having your work worn by these people is a feat of your work standing on itself, and also the person wanting, like, having a connection to you, I guess. And a lot of it's also, you know, like the stylist just likes the stuff, and it's complete, it's a potluck, because you'll have 100 brands that are competing for the same placement, and then it's down to whoever the stylist wants to go with. Anita did that post for me about Wicked, and
that
somebody,
Barata,
yeah, love you.
That's where I found you. So
yeah, And somebody had commented on that post saying, okay, but he was already designing for celebs before this, so it's not that cool.
Right.
And that was like, fair enough. Yes, I'm very lucky that I've worked with incredible talents before. That doesn't take away from this moment. And that doesn't mean that if I've worked with a particular talent before that I'll work with them again, or that means I can work with whoever I want. It still takes a lot of hard work, and that's not to discredit myself or any other young creative. How many brands in London this year alone have had to close their doors, young brands, because they just can't stay afloat, that have had millions of people, like they've had incredible press, but it's not enough. Like I said earlier, like the fashion carousel really never stops turning. It's the most dizzying ride in the world.
Do you think ultimately it's just down to the energy you put into it?
I think it's the energy you put in and the energy you put out, and what you put out into the world. And if you're genuinely joyful and inspired by what you do, that comes across and people see that, and it puts a smile on somebody else's face to see like your excitement about your work. And that's also going to get people to want to help you. If when you're talking about your stuff, you have a real smile on your face and you get carried away and you get lost in your words, people are going to see that, and people are going to, that's infectious.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened with Cynthia and I.
Talk to me about that. You met Cynthia in a shop?
I met Cynthia in the Loewe store in Bond Street last spring.
Yeah.
Spring 23. And I'd recognized Cynthia, and she'd complimented one of the rings I was wearing, and then we'd started just having a little chit chat and a conversation. And it was really wonderful to speak to her because she has such a profound understanding of jewelry and diamonds and stones and gems and the way that works, and she has a real appreciation for the craft. And also she's just so sweet and so lovely. And we'd stayed in touch, and then I'd reached out to her at the beginning of this year in regards to her Met look this year.
Okay.
And that translated into this whole jewelry box that Elphaba would have taken with her to Shiz.
Wow.
There was so many pieces in there. There was a lot of pieces that are just for Cynthia that, you know, that she has and the world will see at some point. And she actually, she was so happy with the pieces, she'd put in a word with Universal, and that led to me having the collab with Wicked and being stocked in Bloomingdale's with that Wicked collab.
Yeah.
So again, and that, I think that also came from the genuine relationship that I was lucky enough to be able to build with Cynthia, and that friendship, and also the excitement that we'd both shared over the pieces made. It's all about the art and connecting through the art, I think.
What is the feedback that you've received after Diet Prada posted about your collection?
It's been wonderful. I've had a lot of people that, you know, I didn't know about me and I didn't know about them reach out and say they really love the work. I hope that a lot of people popped down to Bloomingdale's and picked up some of the pieces. But it's just been really wonderful. And I feel like Anita has a really solid community with Diet Prada, and I would say I very much did struggle with finding the balance of embracing like my South Asian heritage and not leaning too far into it that it becomes just a buzzword. I'd very much struggled with that before I'd met Anita, and then she, I think, made me feel a lot more special about being a South Asian designer. You know, like I've broken barriers for, I've beat through the glass ceiling. I was one of the first South Asian designers to be at the Met Gala. And now I've done that 2 years in a row. I was the youngest designer to do it. Like history, I was the youngest designer to be worn at the Met Gala, period.
Yeah.
And to do that whilst also being South Asian is crazy.
Why do you think it was you?
Because I'm fab.
Love that.
No, I don't know. I don't think anyone could really answer that question.
Do you know why I asked that? Because over the years we have seen, particularly in media, we've seen South Asian creatives, producers, directors, actors being the first South Asian to do something, right? And I think we're still covering a lot of ground on that, being the first South Asian something to do something.
I mean, like Priya Ahluwalia winning the New Establishment Women's Wear Award on Monday was incredible. Yeah. Priya is a great example of this. I feel like she's won so many awards, and she's been the first one of us to win these awards. It's great.
What are your hopes for this space, like the space of jewelry designers? Where do you see it growing up to when it comes to like representation places like the Met. And I don't just mean South Asian representation. I just mean more of everyone being
I feel
available.
like for me, it's like, okay, you could wear the most incredible Cartier necklace that's been sat in a vault for 150 years, and you'll look great. But you could also wear something cool and new and innovative and fresh that, you know, is actually fun. And I think that's going to be something we see more of, like this whole uproar of people wearing vintage and archive over the last couple of years with clothes is going to lead to some people wanting to wear something new when it comes to their accessories.
Yeah.
That's my trend prediction for 2025. Archive clothes with new accessories.
Okay, noted for 2025. So you've worked with Cynthia, but we've also seen you work with many other people over the years. So this is not a new thing for you. You've worked with Beyoncé.
I've worked with Beyonce.
With Maya Jama, who are the two that I saw up front.
Yes.
Anyone else?
Beyonce, Maya Jama, Addison Rae, love her. Anok Yai, Bella Hadid, Gigi Hadid, Winnie Harlow, Tiana Taylor. Honestly, any cool girl you can think of has worn Basliq, and that's what the whole brand's about. It's about being aspirational in the sense that all the cool girls are wearing it, but it's accessible because it's $100, it's £100. You know, that's a price point that everybody can save up towards, or set a goal that's an achievable goal. It was about making every person feel as though they're thriving. That's where the name comes from. That's what I want to do. I want to make every girl feel like an it girl. And I'm lucky that I have these it girls who wear the pieces and love the pieces, whether they wear it because they love me or they wear it because they love the product. Who's to say? But at the end of the day, it's still making every girl feel happy. That's what counts.
You know, this whole conversation about like not being like over about your background or even like the boxes you're ticking, quote unquote, right? By doing what you're doing, but you're just being.
Yeah.
And I think that I always think back to that idea of just like, well, if we all just focused on doing and focusing on the thing that we enjoy, then
that's what I've always thought. I've always thought if I was out there being like, I'm brown, so you know, like bulldog, rah, 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 about that, it would have the complete opposite effect. Instead, let the work show for itself, and that's going to do more good and open more doors than trying to push through those doors because of the color of my skin.
Or also feeling like there's only space for one. Do you see that often?
I've never felt on the receiving end of that. But I do sort of understand that is probably like a genuine fear that a lot of people have, that I can't bring you in because then I'll get ousted, you know? I think in London in particular, that's not really the case.
Running Basliq for the many years that you have now, what's been your biggest learning about business? Or a learning?
Make sure your cash flow is set. Worry about that, and everything else is not as long as that's okay, you'll figure out the rest. But that's my one tip to anybody starting something, is have your cash flow sorted out, because that's what keeps you alive.
And how would you do that if you were starting out and didn't really have like a presence?
Well, you need to know where your next paycheck's coming from, and if that paycheck doesn't come, how are you going to sustain your business and pay what you need to pay out?
Have you had moments like that running this business?
There's been so many moments where I've had to like cut my losses or not be able to do something because I haven't had the funds available at that point to be able to do it. There's been opportunities that I've not been able to follow through on, and it's all just a learning curve. Or there's been like times where I haven't had my invoices paid.
What do you do then?
Well, I can't afford to go into litigation, so I have to just sit on my hands and take it. But it's also that's the conversation that's not happening enough, is like paying creatives, pay young designers. If someone's working for you, pay them. Chasing out on an invoice and then, you know, throwing a BOF post about how much money you've made this year is really tacky. It's so tacky.
Yeah. Amen to that. More people should hear that.
Maya said something in her speech during the Fashion Awards the other day. It was the BFC New Gen list was read out, and she just screamed, "Pay them!" And I just was like, "Yeah, she gets it," because it's true. you know, and she's someone who is all about, if she works with a young designer, she will make sure they get paid.
Is it easier said than done? Like, what do you
So much
actually
easier said than
do
done.
if you're not being paid?
You can't do anything about it.
Yeah. Do you think it's sustainable?
I don't think it's sustainable. I think that's why so many young designers apply for all these grants, and it's heartbreaking if they don't win, because to them, to anybody else looking outwards, it's, oh, it's just an award, it's fine. But that's paying your seamstresses, that's paying your IP lawyers to make sure that your designs are safe. You know, and it's like when stores close down and then you don't get paid for your orders, the store might be taking a loss, but you've also lost X amount that was that you'd allotted to carry you on over. So I think my biggest tip, if somebody was starting out, is make sure you've got a good accountant and make sure you have you know what your cash flow is going to be like.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. Again, very wise. What would your next dream collaboration be?
My next dream collaboration?
If you just put it out into the universe.
I don't want to put it out there because
Okay, maybe not sharing a name, but like sharing how it would feel.
I would really love to be able to work on the Met Gala again this coming year. I think doing it a third year in a row would just be like, after that, do you know what? Fine. It's fine. I don't need to do it again, but let me hit my third year. Let me hit my 3. That's my big 2025 goal, is making it back to the Met.
Wow. Anything we can look out for when looking for your work in previous Met Galas? Like, who have you styled? What work have you done?
I had my rings on One Talent my first year. It was this ring and a similar ring which had some stars on it. Last year, there was a piece on Cynthia, I believe, and Jeremy Pope was wearing some earrings I'd made. He was wearing these 2 rings. And next year, I guess we'll find out.
Ooh, exciting. And your very exciting project you can't talk about.
My very exciting project that I can't talk about.
But you will be posting about.
I will be posting about profusely come the new year.
Yeah, make sure you follow him.
Yeah. I'm closing out the year with something really fun. I'm doing, so my favorite restaurant growing up in Dubai is this burger place called Salt. And every year they do this incredible, like, big production pop-up at the Museum of the Future in Dubai called Salt Camp. And so this year for Salt Camp, we designed 3 Basliq pieces in salt colours that'll be available to shop exclusively at Salt Camp this year.
Wow, he is thriving.
He's thriving. He's going to be thriving in the sunshine.
Oh, that makes me happy. And it's good, actually, that you get to escape. That's very fortunate that you can, like, you know.
That also feels almost like a homecoming sort of thing for me, because I've had a really wonderful year, and to close the year out by doing something there is just so special.
Do you enjoy what you do?
More than anything.
Would you ever stop doing it?
No.
Was it ever a question across your career? You always knew?
It was never, am I going to stop? It was, how can I keep going?
Yeah.
There was a time, maybe around 18 months ago, I was doing a lot of assisting work just to, you know, keep things going. And I don't regret it for a second, because, okay, it might have been shit, but it makes you more resilient. It makes you grittier. And you need to be gritty to keep going in this industry. It's so cutthroat.
Yeah.
That if you don't have the thick skin and you can't take rejection and you can't do what it takes to keep yourself trotting along, then you shouldn't be doing it at all.
What would you say is something that maybe needs to change in the industry?
Pay young designers.
Okay, we're talking about pay, but I think that shows how important it is.
Especially, I think, for people coming in from a background where you might not have familial support. You know, because you start out in this industry and chances are you're going to be doing unpaid work for the first 5 years, like whilst you're at university and even leaving university. It's difficult.
Something I didn't get a chance to ask you, which was, who did you actually look up to in pop culture and media when you were growing up?
I can very vividly remember seeing, like, do you remember the Hannah Montana movie? She wears that, like, dress with the big sequins and there's a little star on it. That was like a piece of clothing that I always thought was just so cool. And then growing on from that, like Justin Bieber used to wear purple all the time. I was a big Justin Bieber fan as a kid.
Okay.
And then I started implementing that into my wardrobe. And I think that's the first time I was ever really influenced, like within my own personal style, and not just like, that was the first time I felt as though I was starting to build a personal style and like actually implement things into my wardrobe. But I also have the very clear memory. My mum had a pair of white Prada acrylic sunglasses that had a swirl on the side. And the image of those sunglasses had never left my head. And I think that they were in my head when I started designing my first rings with this enamel. And that's always been on the reference board for me.
Okay. So you always go back to the original.
I go back to those. I think the spring, summer 2009. Miuccia's always on the mood board. I think if Miuccia's not on your mood board, then you're doing something wrong.
What do you think was the best era for fashion? Decade-wise.
Decade?
Yeah.
I'm really kind of into the decade we're living in now.
Okay.
I think since 2020 has begun, we've had a lot of really cool things come down the runway. If not that, then like the noughties.
Noughties.
The noughties. The noughties, not the 90s.
Okay. Specifically the noughties? Why?
Specifically the noughties.
Why not the 90s?
The 90s was, I think it was like the refinement of the 90s into the noughties is what I really like. You know, the sleek tailoring was so good. I think there's a lot of prints and patterns. I have a lot of stuff in like my little archive that is from like the early 2000s.
Yeah.
And also I just think like the quality of the stuff around then was incredible. Like I have a pair of Saint Laurent trousers from 2006 that I found in a vintage store.
Yeah.
That rival a pair of Saint Laurent trousers I bought last year.
Okay, so noughties.
Noughties is where it's at.
Underrated, I think.
Also, the accessories from the noughties I think are fab. Tom Ford's last Gucci collection was 2003, I believe, forward to 2003.
Yeah.
And it was his last 3 years at Gucci that I really loved.
Yeah.
He was there 1997 to 2003, I think.
Okay.
I'm scared of an archivist that's going to come and like beat me up for getting that wrong. I'm pretty sure that's where he was there. And his last 3 years there, I have 2 shirts from his 2002 collection. That's where it was at for me.
Okay, good to know. Well, maybe we'll put some links down for people to look back.
Yeah, I think everybody needs to go and look up the white Prada acrylic spiral sunglasses.
Yeah, that's where it all began.
That's where it began. Yeah.
Amaan, it's been great having you on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for letting me yap. The
last question I ask everyone that comes on is, what do you have strong game in?
Yapping. I feel like that is my superpower, is that I could talk to a brick wall and I could befriend a brick wall.
Do you ever overthink your yapping? Like, do you go home and think, oh, I shouldn't have said that?
On the rare occasion. There's one thing I did which I still overthink about, and I'm not going to put it out in public because then it will truly haunt me till the day I die. But there has been one instance in my years that I always thought that was inappropriate. That was not the right thing to say.
Yeah. And have people forgotten it? Yeah.
I think everybody else has forgotten it. I'm the only one who still remembers. Actually, no, a friend brought it up to me a couple of months ago.
Oh no. It's that thing they always say, isn't it? That no one's thinking about you as much as you're thinking about yourself. But sometimes that's not true. Sometimes people are thinking about you.
But yeah, my strong game is talking.
I love it. Well, what better place to exercise that than here? So
thank you for letting me talk.
Thank you for sharing, and I'm so thrilled to see everything that you're doing. I can't imagine where you're going to be in the next decade. But
well, in the decade, I'll be gone.
You'll have disappeared.
I'll have disappeared by the end of the decade.
And it's such a mystery to me still. I feel like you need to share a bit more about where you're planning to go, but obviously.
But then it won't be disappearing.
Exactly.
I'll just be moving on.
Yeah. Wow. I've never heard anybody say that, by the time they're 30, they want to...
I want to disappear by I'm 30.
Fair. Yeah. Well, all the best with that. I hope that, you get the retirement that you need.
Fingers crossed.
And all the best. I can't wait for everyone to see your Wicked collection.
Thank you.
So hopefully everyone checks it out on the Bloomingdale's website or the actual shop.
Bloomingdale's 59th Street in New York has a huge Wicked takeover on the ground floor. It's like you step in there and you're in the Emerald City.
Wow. Okay.
So it's there, and then it's on Bloomingdale's online as well.
Amazing. Well, thank you.
Thank you.